Hello, this is Raising Barbarians. I'm Jay,
And I'm Amelia.
and today we're going to talk about what it means to raise barbarians.
What does being a barbarian?
Well, it's a cute name that you came up with for our show. I didn't think about it too much, but we certainly want our boys to be strong and not have a lot of screens and grow up using their bodies and using their minds and not just being institutionalized through certain education models that are popular these days, and where you don't get to use your bodies and you often are put in front of screens, and people are often afraid, so they keep their kids indoors and they don't let them outside because they're afraid of Lyme disease or kidnapping and things, and we're just afraid of doing something that they don't believe everyone else keeps their kids inside, so they want to just do what everyone else does. So that's what it means to me.
I like the Lyme diseases and kidnapping. I like those as examples of what people are afraid of outside. It's true. That does about run the gambit. Yeah, so for me, the reason I was interested in naming it Barbarians is because, all the things that Jay just said about different things that we value and things that we try to do in our house, but the main word that came to mind for me was we want the opposite of having children who are over-civilized. So for over-civilization, like I wrote down a little list of what it means to be over-civilized. So one of them is alienation from nature, which is something, the opposite of what we want. We really want our boys to, you can have several different kinds of relationships with nature, and we can expose our boys to a lot of different kinds of relationships you can have with it. But just liking being outside and understanding why you need to be outside, and that humans are supposed to spend a lot of their time outside, is one of the main things that I'd like to get across, however they fit that into their lives as they get older. And so, we spend a tremendous amount of time outside, the boys do, and they've been exposed to a lot of, whether it's foraging or kayaking or camping, hiking, they've been exposed to a lot of things that they can do outside that can bring them joy and a sense of accomplishment. The next one that I had, one of the other ones that I had is oversensitivity. Is a sign of over-civilization.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure if they're just saying, I can speak for myself regardless of what the definition I read was. Oversensitivity must at the very least be oversensitivity to things that people can say to you, right? Like psychological sensitivity. I don't think they're primarily talking about physical sensitivity, though those two I think will go together. So, not being triggered, right? So the idea would be you don't want to have a barbarian would be somebody who is not so psychologically fragile that the fact that people can say things that they dislike sends them into a spiral. Now, since we have boys, I don't know that would be a tremendous problem we'd be dealing with anyway. I don't know how often men are triggered.
I don't know what you mean by that word. I know it's something that's said in pop culture, usually to talk about. The way I'm used to hearing it used is someone hearing like a political thing.
Yeah, but because so much is political, that's
and then before that, I've heard it talked about bringing someone to, the trigger of a gun.
Mm-hmm. So it is a political thing, but the point is that because, the personal has been made political, that means you can be triggered by anything, because anything can be viewed as violence to a large portion of the population once you start considering words violence. But again, this is what I'm saying is this is a facet of over civilization, that something like people saying the wrong words, you've become so sensitive that people saying the wrong words creates a large emotional disturbance for you.
Yeah, I believe in being polite, and that there's certain words that are better not said if you are in work environments or just even in social environments. There's things that are better not said, and I also believe in you got to watch out who you associate with. I don't want to associate with people who are foul mouthed, for example. I don't, like it when someone's swearing or cruel in their manner of speech. I like when people are respectful and kind and patient, but I certainly don't believe in letting things control you. If you are angry about hearing something, that's certainly valid. I do believe that emotions help us make decisions, but you do want to know what you're doing, and you do want to think before you speak, and especially before you act.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with all of that. So another thing was, and we've talked about this before, being used to being acclimated to extreme comfort would be another thing that we would advocate against for yourself and for children. Be used to being uncomfortable is one of the best things you can do for your own health, for your children's health, both yeah, sure, putting your body under physical duress, but also just psychological discomfort, boredom, and being used to a wide variety of temperatures, being okay with the fact that we sweat and shiver and things like that. So that's kind of a subset of being, having a relationship with nature. But I think it's another important aspect of raising barbarians. I saw a cute quote as far as, if it's savage, savage, barbarian, civilized, why wouldn't you want to be civilized? And I saw something that said, it was Teddy Roosevelt said, unless we keep the barbarian virtues, gaining the civilized ones will be of little avail. So unless we learn...
That's an interesting quote.
Yeah. Unless we learn how to, stay stoic in the face of tough times, then having, any sophisticated ideas aren't really going to matter, because I assume what he was getting at is that your culture will be consumed by people who are willing to do the hard things that need to be done.
Your society will be consumed by people who are willing to do the hard things that need to be done, you said?
Yes.
What does that mean?
If people don't keep their ability to do difficult things and deal with reality, so that would be
Saying other people who can deal with reality.
Other people who can deal with reality and are willing to deal with things as they are will destroy your civilization.
And that's a context for barbarians taking over Roman civilization.
Mm-hmm. And the context for Teddy Roosevelt saying, listen, all this education and everything is going to come to nothing if you're not willing to deal with reality as it is, because you think that it's beneath you.
People think reality is beneath them.
People think that they shouldn't have to deal with the reality of situations, if it doesn't fit their psychological model, if it doesn't seem very nice to them, it doesn't seem easy, it doesn't seem nice, then people will want to avoid dealing with the facts on the ground. So for instance, if you were to talk about anything dealing with, if we were to say that the way that culture stays in power is by the point of a gun. That we have to use force to keep society together. If we want to ignore that and instead pretend that it's like ideas and democracy that keeps a society going, then you're not going to have an easy time moving forward when there's other people who do realize that force is necessary and it has to be used. If you're unwilling to use force because you think like it's all love, then you'll in the long run into problems.
I don't fully know the context
Okay.
as pertaining to our podcast.
Well, what we were talking about was that as a barbarian, you should be willing to deal with hard things, and that when you don't deal with hard things, other people are going to be able to overpower you.
Sure.
And then I said one of the barbarian virtues would be dealing with the facts as they are. And then I said a lot of people don't want to deal with reality as it is.
Sure.
And then you said, what do you mean people think reality is beneath them? And then I was saying that people don't want to deal with like the reality of force being something that underlies our society. Whereas recognizing that force underlies your society, I think would be an example. First, I was just trying to answer your question, but if you'd like to reel it all in, would be an example of a barbarian virtue. To recognize what is actually going on, the underpinning of relationships. Okay.
I appreciate that explanation there, Amelia.
Okay.
What else is on your list of things to talk about?
Those are my big ones.
Do you want me to talk about that idea that you put forward of the what was that barbarian virtue? It was
Well, like so for instance, another example of it would be, right, what does it look like in our society when we don't deal with things as they really are? If we're to say that dealing with underlying facts, right, being stoic, dealing with reality, not avoiding reality. So we see a lot of people in our over-civilized time today avoiding obvious realities.
Sure. Well, I think that the truth and honesty are good things. I think I talked about that, being truthful and honest and doing what's right, not just doing what's beneficial in the moment or popular in that context, but doing what's, I don't believe might makes right, and I don't believe it appeals to authority.
Do you think might makes right, like
I
actually
think appeals to authority.
do you think might makes right?
I said I don't believe it might
No,
makes right.
I know, I'm saying, so you can think, oh, we shouldn't live in a society that upholds this as a virtue, but do you think the reality of the situation is that kind of those with the most might get to decide what is legally right?
I believe what's legally right is not always what's morally correct.
I agree.
So something could be legally okay, like being a police officer is something that is legally okay, but I don't necessarily agree with the concept and, oftentimes how that can interact with, not that I'm against, actually for law and order, and I'm for there being some kind of security force, but some of this to me seems like I don't want to get off into different topics of why we called the show Raising Barbarians, but I certainly believe in being honest, and honesty doesn't mean doing what's popular in the current now. It's something that was popular a long time ago, now we laugh at, but sometimes people act like that same thing couldn't be going on now. But I believe that there are many things going on now that people in the future will laugh at and say, how did they not know? So I would like to do what's right by people, and my kids especially, who I have a lot of influence in, not just putting them in a school that's institutionalized, and not just teaching them things that might be popular right now, but I don't believe will hold the test of time, and that I don't believe are helpful or good necessary, or that are not good.
Yes. Then another example that I had written down of the difference between like a more barbarian virtue versus a modern virtue would be that empathy is considered like a really good thing in modern culture, whereas in past times we would have said that something like compassion was what you would want for people. Empathy being feeling with, compassion being feeling for.
Empathy and compassion and sympathy are all good things. As long as you know how to use those, they're great.
Sure, but there's a ton of values that you can have, and most people are going to have, let's say that there's 100 values in the world, but we order them in a certain way. And at this point in our world, empathy is held up as one of the top virtues. And I'm saying that
I would say a problem would be people going on social media or the news or hearing a bunch of things and caring about things that are far away and unimportant, and not caring about the people and things in their own lives that are right there. And you can get swept up in other people's things that really don't matter in your own life, and it can also drain people to think about things that are going on that you don't really have any you can't really do anything about them, and they're out of your control. Instead of focusing on your own life and your own friends and family, you get to focus on things that are not that.
I agree. I think that that's trying to focus on what you have control over in your immediate, like in-group preference, like your immediate in-group is something that I would put under barbarian virtues, and is something that people have a hard time struggle with a lot today. Always trying to fix problems that are very far away from them, and often being apathetic or malicious towards the people and problems that are right there at their front doorstep. That's a hard one, because it is interesting. It's not really worrying about big world problems is not a problem that our sons have had yet, because we haven't introduced them to that problem, and the only way young children can know about that and it become a big part of their life is because you choose to make it a big part of their life. So hopefully, as they don't have a lot of that information, that will be one that comes pretty naturally to them as they're slowly introduced to the outside world as they get older. There's a lot of, the boys are learning about, we're doing some history right now, and we have to make some decisions about which sorts of things we want to introduce them to throughout history. And it's tricky. some of those things will be more appropriate as they get older. But yes, putting all of your positive feelings and your energies towards a far-flung outer circle is not valuable. Those are all the notes I have, Daddy.
Any final thoughts that you have?
I would say, being a barbarian just overall means finding strength in all of its many forms and trying to bring that out the most in your children. They're, and that includes being like strong in your virtues, right? Like, what are the virtues? What are the traditional virtues? What are the cardinal virtues? What are the virtues that people have valued not only now, but in the past and far, far in the past? Honor, dignity, respect, honesty, strength, these things. How can we make sure that these are the virtues that are at the forefront? Wisdom, temperance, how can we make it so that these are the virtues that are at the forefront? And then how can we get those virtues, how can we put our children in the best position to be able to actually practice those virtues? And how can we discuss problematic behaviors with them in terms of these ideas? And that is what we're aiming for and what we hope to help people do on this podcast.
Yeah, the boys have been learning, the 10 Commandments and Jesus Christ teachings and, stuff like, leadership structure as far as me and you being the leaders of the household and, being respectful and talking respectful and kind. And they're also learning how to, be someone who sticks up and does the right thing, and how to aggressively go after, what they want. And, they're really learning a lot. I'm very proud of our 4 boys.
Me too.
And counting. One day they'll be
Not
fifth.
counting too soon though.
Not
That
yet.
made it seem like I am pregnant. I am not.
One day. One day she'll be pregnant again. Not yet. One day.
Okay.
All right. Subscribe, like, enjoy, comment. See you later. See you next time.
Bye.